Ladies and gentlemen, today I stand before you to speak about a man who refused to surrender to circumstances, who stared failure in the face and said, "Not today." This is the story of the man who wouldn't quit, Joe Ranga. Joe Ranga was not born into comfort. He was not handed opportunities wrapped in gold. His journey began in uncertainty, in struggle, in moments when the world seemed determined to push him backward. But what made Joe different was not his strength, his resources, or even his talent. It was his decision, a simple but powerful decision, to never quit. There were days when rejection knocked on his door repeatedly. Dreams seemed distant. Progress was slow. Doubt whispered constantly. Yet Joe understood something many people forget. Quitting guarantees failure, but persistence keeps possibility alive. Every setback Joe faced became fuel. When others saw obstacles, he saw lessons. When doors closed, he searched for windows. When people doubted him, he used their doubt as motivation. He realized that success is not built in moments of comfort. It is forged in moments of pressure. Joe Ranga fell many times. But every time he fell, he rose stronger, wiser, and more determined. He learned that resilience is not about never failing. It's about refusing to stay down. He chose growth over excuses. He chose action over fear. He chose faith over frustration. The world often celebrates the final victory, but it rarely sees the sleepless nights, the silent battles, the tears wiped away in private. Joe's true victory was not fame or achievement. It was the courage to continue when quitting felt easier. And that is why his story matters. Because deep inside every one of us is a dream waiting for courage. Every one of us faces storms. The difference between those who succeed and those who stop is not luck. It is persistence. Joe Ranga teaches us that greatness is not reserved for the gifted. It belongs to the relentless. To those who wake up after failure and try again. To those who refuse to let circumstances define their destiny. So today, remember this: success is not about never being defeated. It is about never accepting defeat as final. Be relentless. Be determined. Be the person who wouldn't quit. Because the world does not remember those who almost made it. It remembers those who refuse to give up. Humble beginnings are often misunderstood. Society sometimes measures potential by environment, resources, and privilege. If someone grows up without financial stability, powerful connections, or elite education, people quickly assume limitations. But Joe Ranga's story proves that beginnings are merely a starting line, not a final destination. Joe did not begin his journey surrounded by comfort or opportunity. He began where many dreams struggled to survive, in uncertainty. Resources were limited. Support was inconsistent. There were moments when survival itself demanded more attention than ambition. In such circumstances, it is easy to believe that success belongs only to others, to those born into advantage. But Joe understood something powerful. Your environment may influence you, but it does not imprison you. Instead of allowing his background to define him, he allowed it to discipline him. Hardship became his training ground. When others enjoyed comfort, he developed endurance. When others relied on privilege, he relied on persistence. When others feared losing status, he had nothing to lose, and everything to gain. Humble beginnings often build invisible strengths. They teach gratitude because nothing is taken for granted. They build resilience because comfort is rare. They develop creativity because solutions must be invented. They sharpen hunger because mediocrity is not an option. Joe did not see his struggles as curses. He saw them as preparation. Every difficulty strengthened his mindset. Every limitation forced him to think differently. Every obstacle required effort beyond the ordinary. Many people believe success starts with opportunity. Joe proved that success starts with belief. Belief that your current condition is temporary. Belief that effort compounds over time. Belief that growth is always possible, regardless of where you stand today. Humble beginnings also teach accountability. When no one is coming to rescue you, you learn to rescue yourself. Joe stopped waiting for perfect circumstances. He stopped blaming external factors. Instead, he focused on what he could control: his attitude, his work ethic, and his consistency. He understood that while he could not rewrite his past, he could author his future. There were moments when comparisons threatened his confidence. Seeing others move faster, supported by resources he did not have, could have discouraged him. But instead of comparing starting points, Joe compared effort. He focused on daily improvement. Step by step. Skill by skill. Lesson by lesson. Humble beginnings did not shrink his vision. They expanded it. They gave him perspective. They gave him humility. They gave him strength that comfort could never provide. And most importantly, they gave him hunger, the kind of hunger that refuses to accept average results. Joe Ranga's journey teaches us that your roots do not restrict your reach. Where you begin does not determine how far you can go. Your past may explain you, but it does not define you. What defines you is your response to it, your willingness to rise above it, to grow beyond it, and to build something greater despite it. Persistence is the quiet force that separates temporary defeat from permanent failure. It is not loud. It does not always look heroic. Often, it is simply the decision to try one more time when exhaustion whispers, "Stop." For Joe Ranga, persistence was not a strategy, it was a way of life. There were countless moments when quitting would have been easier. Progress was slow. Results were invisible. Effort did not immediately produce reward. In those moments, most people begin to doubt the path itself. They ask, "Is this worth it?" Joe asked a different question: "What happens if I stop?" He understood a powerful truth. Quitting closes doors permanently, but persistence keeps doors slightly open. As long as you continue, possibility remains alive. Persistence does not guarantee immediate success. What it guarantees is opportunity. Every additional attempt increases skill. Every repeated effort builds experience. Every setback refines strategy. Joe learned that consistency compounds quietly. What feels like small, unnoticed effort today becomes significant progress tomorrow. There were days when motivation was gone. Inspiration had disappeared. Energy felt drained. But Joe did not rely on motivation. He relied on discipline. He showed up even when he did not feel like it. He worked even when applause was absent. He practiced even when no one was watching. That is the true nature of persistence, continuing without external validation. Rejection did not stop him. It redirected him. Failure did not defeat him. It informed him. Obstacles did not end his journey. They reshaped his approach. Every no strengthened his resolve. Every delay sharpened his patience. Persistence also builds emotional endurance. When you continue through difficulty, you train your mind to tolerate discomfort. You become less fragile. You become less reactive to temporary setbacks. Joe developed the ability to stay calm in chaos because he had faced struggle repeatedly and survived it repeatedly. Many people quit because they mistake slow progress for no progress. Joe refused to make that mistake. He understood that growth often happens beneath the surface. Just like roots grow underground before a tree rises above ground, his efforts were developing unseen strength. He trusted the process even when he could not yet see the results. Persistence also creates momentum. The longer you continue, the harder it becomes to give up because you have invested too much effort to abandon it. Joe built streaks of effort, days, weeks, months of consistent action. That momentum carried him through moments of doubt. Most importantly, persistence transformed his identity. He stopped being someone who hoped for success and became someone who earned it daily. The habit of continuing became stronger than the temptation to quit. In a world that seeks quick results, Joe chose long-term commitment. In a culture that celebrates overnight success, he embraced gradual progress. While others chased shortcuts, he built endurance. Because he knew something simple but powerful: as long as you keep moving forward, no matter how small the step, possibility remains alive. Failure has a way of feeling permanent. In the moment it happens, it can seem like a final judgment, a stamp that says, "Not good enough." Many people allow one mistake, one setback, or one rejection to define their identity. But Joe Ranga refused to accept failure as a verdict. To him, failure was information. It was instruction. It was education disguised as disappointment. Joe experienced failure more than once. Plans collapsed. Efforts went unnoticed. Opportunities slipped away. There were times when he gave everything he had, only to receive nothing in return. The emotional weight of those moments could have convinced him to stop trying. Instead, he chose to analyze rather than internalize. He did not say, "I am a failure." He asked, "What did this teach me?" That small shift in perspective changed everything. Failure, when viewed correctly, becomes a powerful teacher. It reveals weaknesses that success often hides. It exposes gaps in preparation. It highlights areas where improvement is necessary. Joe treated every setback like a lesson plan. He studied it. He broke it down. He asked hard questions. He adjusted his approach. Rather than being embarrassed by failure, he became curious about it. Curiosity removed fear. When you are willing to learn, you stop being afraid of mistakes. Joe understood that avoiding failure often means avoiding growth. If you never take risks, you never stretch beyond comfort. And if you never stretch, you never expand your potential. Failure also built humility within him. Success can sometimes create arrogance, but failure keeps you grounded. It reminds you that growth is ongoing. It teaches patience. It develops empathy for others who struggle. Joe's setbacks made him wiser, not bitter. They made him disciplined, not discouraged. There were moments when people doubted him because of his failures. Some labeled him unsuccessful. Others questioned his ability. But Joe recognized something powerful. Other people may see the fall, but they do not see the lesson you extract from it. They judge the moment, you control the meaning. He refused to allow temporary defeat to become a permanent identity. Each failure strengthened his resilience. Each mistake refined his skills. Each loss prepared him for future opportunities. When success eventually arrived, it did not surprise him, because he had been building toward it through every previous setback. Failure also toughened his mindset. After you fail once and survive, you realize something important. Failure does not destroy you. It may hurt. It may disappoint. It may slow you down. But it does not end you unless you allow it to. Joe embraced the idea that falling is part of movement. Only those who attempt great things risk falling. Only those who push boundaries encounter resistance. Failure became proof that he was trying, stretching, growing. Instead of seeing failure as a wall, he saw it as a stepping stone. Instead of seeing it as a full stop, he saw it as a comma, a pause before the next attempt. And with every lesson learned, he became stronger, smarter, and more prepared for the next challenge that stood before him. Resilience is not something you are born with, it is something you develop. It is forged in moments of discomfort, shaped by adversity, and strengthened under pressure. For Joe Ranga, resilience was not a personality trait, it was a skill built through repeated challenges. Pressure has a way of revealing character. When situations become difficult, when expectations rise, when uncertainty surrounds you, your true strength is tested. Many people break under pressure because they have never trained for it. Joe, however, came to understand that pressure was not his enemy. It was his teacher. Every challenge he faced added weight to his shoulders. Financial stress, emotional setbacks, professional obstacles. Each one demanded strength he did not know he had. At times, the pressure felt overwhelming. Doubt would creep in. Fatigue would set in. The temptation to escape the discomfort was strong. But Joe made a critical decision. He would not run from pressure, he would grow through it. Pressure refined him. Just like steel is strengthened in fire, Joe's mindset hardened through difficulty. The very situations that could have broken him became the moments that built him. Each time he survived a hard season, his confidence increased. Not because things became easier, but because he became stronger. Resilience is developed when you refuse to collapse under strain. Joe trained himself to stay steady when chaos surrounded him. When others panicked, he focused. When others complained, he adapted. When circumstances shifted unexpectedly, he adjusted his strategy instead of surrendering. He understood that pressure is often a sign of growth. When you aim higher, resistance increases. When you pursue meaningful goals, obstacles appear. Pressure does not mean you are on the wrong path. Often it means you are stepping into something greater. Resilience also requires emotional control. There were moments when frustration could have taken over. Anger could have clouded his judgment. Fear could have stopped him from moving forward. But Joe learned to manage his emotions instead of being controlled by them. He paused before reacting. He reflected before responding. He chose calm over chaos. Another truth Joe embraced was this: comfort does not create strength. Easy seasons feel good, but they rarely transform you. Growth happens when you are stretched beyond what feels manageable. Pressure forces creativity. It sharpens problem solving. It demands endurance. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" Joe asked, "What is this preparing me for?" That mindset shift turned obstacles into opportunities for development. The heavier the burden, the stronger his capacity became. The longer the struggle, the deeper his endurance grew. Resilience also builds confidence in survival. When you pass through enough storms and remain standing, you begin to trust your ability to handle whatever comes next. Joe stopped fearing future challenges because he had evidence from his past, proof that he could endure. Over time, pressure stopped intimidating him. It became familiar. It became manageable. It became part of the process. And with each new challenge, his resilience expanded, shaping him into someone who could withstand storms without losing direction. Doubt is one of the most powerful forces a person can face. It can weaken confidence, distort vision, and slowly convince someone to abandon their dreams. For many, doubt becomes a wall. But for Joe Ranga, doubt became fuel. From the very beginning, Joe encountered skepticism. Some questioned his abilities. Others doubted his vision. A few openly predicted his failure. Their words could have easily planted insecurity in his mind. And at times they did. He is human after all. There were moments when he questioned himself, when uncertainty clouded his confidence. But instead of allowing doubt to paralyze him, Joe made a deliberate choice. He would transform it into motivation. He realized something critical. Doubt only has power if you accept it as truth. If you treat it as a challenge instead, it becomes energy. Every negative comment became a reminder that he had something to prove, not to others but to himself. Joe began to see doubt differently. Instead of hearing, "You can't," he translated it into, "Show that you can." Instead of shrinking under criticism, he expanded his effort. When people underestimated him, he outworked expectations. When they questioned his ability, he sharpened his skills. Doubt sharpened his focus. Rather than wasting time arguing or defending himself, Joe invested that energy into improvement. He studied more. He practiced longer. He refined his craft. He strengthened his weaknesses. Every ounce of skepticism became a reason to push harder. Doubt also taught him self-awareness. When he felt internal doubt, the quiet voice asking, "Are you good enough?" he did not ignore it. He examined it. Was it fear speaking? Was it lack of preparation? Was it comparison to others? Instead of being defeated by internal doubt, he used it as a signal to grow. If he felt unprepared, he prepared more. If he felt inexperienced, he gained experience. If he felt uncertain, he sought knowledge. Doubt became a compass pointing toward improvement. Another powerful lesson Joe learned was that doubt from others often reflects their own limitations. People project their fears onto others. When someone says, "It's impossible," they may mean, "I wouldn't try." Understanding this freed Joe from carrying other people's insecurities. He stopped seeking validation from those who did not share his vision. Instead, he built quiet confidence through action. Small wins strengthened his belief. Consistent effort silenced inner uncertainty. Progress, no matter how small, became proof that he was capable. Doubt can either drain energy or ignite it. Joe chose ignition. Each time someone questioned him, he stored that moment in his memory, not with anger but with determination. He used it during difficult days as a reminder of why he started. He allowed doubt to sharpen his resilience rather than weaken it. Over time, something remarkable happened. The same voices that once doubted him grew silent. Not because he argued with them, but because his results spoke louder than words. And through it all, Joe learned that doubt is not a signal to stop. It is a signal to strengthen. It is not a barrier, it is a challenge. When handled correctly, doubt does not diminish potential. It intensifies effort, deepens focus, and fuels relentless progress. Excuses are comfortable. They protect the ego. They provide temporary relief from responsibility. They make failure feel justified. But they also quietly limit progress. Joe Ranga understood early in his journey that if he wanted to move forward, he had to choose growth over excuses, every single time. It would have been easy for him to blame circumstances. He could have pointed to his background, his limited resources, the lack of support, the unfair comparisons, or the opportunities he never received. All of those reasons were real. All of them were valid. But Joe recognized something powerful. Valid excuses still produce stagnant results. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" he asked, "What can I do about it?" That shift from blame to responsibility changed his trajectory. Growth begins the moment you stop explaining why something isn't working and start figuring out how to make it work. Joe refused to let obstacles become permanent justifications. If he lacked knowledge, he learned. If he lacked skill, he practiced. If he lacked experience, he gained it through action. He did not wait for perfect conditions. He created progress within imperfect ones. Excuses often sound reasonable. I don't have enough time. I'm not ready yet. I didn't get the same opportunities. It's too competitive. Joe heard these thoughts, sometimes even from his own mind. But he learned to challenge them. Instead of accepting limitation, he looked for alternatives. If time was short, he managed it better. If he felt unprepared, he prepared more. If competition was intense, he improved his uniqueness. Growth required humility. To grow, Joe had to admit when he was wrong. He had to accept feedback. He had to confront his weaknesses without defensiveness. That is uncomfortable. It is much easier to protect pride than to improve performance. But Joe valued progress more than pride. He began to treat mistakes as indicators of where growth was needed, not as proof of inadequacy. When something failed, he didn't justify it, he examined it. What could he improve? What skill was missing? What strategy needed adjustment? Growth also demanded consistency. It was not enough to want improvement. He had to commit to daily action. Small habits replaced empty explanations. Productive routines replaced complaints. Instead of spending energy explaining why progress was slow, he invested energy into accelerating it. Another powerful truth Joe embraced was this: excuses delay discomfort, but growth builds strength. Avoiding challenges may feel safe in the short term, but it weakens long-term potential. Facing challenges head-on, even when uncomfortable, builds capacity. When others complained about difficulty, Joe trained through it. When others waited for motivation, he relied on discipline. When others compared their disadvantages, he focused on maximizing his advantages, no matter how small. Over time, this mindset created a powerful transformation. Joe stopped being someone who reacted to circumstances and became someone who shaped them. He moved from victim mentality to ownership mentality, from limitation thinking to solution thinking. Growth became his default response. Every challenge became an opportunity to improve. Every criticism became data for development. Every setback became a reason to sharpen his approach. Because he understood a fundamental truth: excuses may protect your ego, but growth builds your future. Fear is natural. It appears whenever you attempt something meaningful. It shows up when the stakes are high, when the outcome is uncertain, and when the possibility of failure is real. Many people believe courage means not feeling fear at all. But Joe Ranga learned that true courage is not the absence of fear, it is movement in spite of it. Throughout his journey, fear walked beside him. Fear of rejection. Fear of embarrassment. Fear of failing publicly. Fear of disappointing himself and others. At times, the fear felt louder than his confidence. It questioned his readiness. It magnified risks. It whispered worst-case scenarios. But Joe discovered something powerful. Fear is a signal that you are stepping beyond comfort. Comfort rarely produces transformation. Growth requires risk. Risk triggers fear. Therefore, fear is often evidence that you are expanding your limits. Instead of retreating when fear appeared, Joe began to interpret it differently. He saw it as proof that he was pushing himself towards something greater. Courage became a daily decision. It was waking up and trying again after a visible failure. It was speaking up when silence felt safer. It was taking action without guaranteed results. It was committing publicly to goals that could expose him to criticism. Joe did not eliminate fear, he managed it. He learned to separate fear from fact. Just because something felt risky did not mean it was impossible. Just because doubt appeared did not mean defeat was certain. He trained his mind to ask better questions. What is the worst that could happen? What can I learn if this doesn't work? What opportunity might I miss if I don't try? Often, the regret of not trying felt heavier than the fear of failing. Courage also required vulnerability. Stepping into new spaces meant accepting that he might not be the best immediately. It meant risking judgment. It meant exposing unfinished skills. But Joe understood that mastery only comes after imperfect beginnings. He refused to let pride stop him from progress. There were moments when fear told him to delay, to wait for the perfect time, the perfect skill level, the perfect confidence. But Joe realized perfection is often just fear disguised as preparation. If he waited to feel completely ready, he would never move. So he moved while uncertain. He acted while nervous. He stepped forward while his heart raced. Each act of courage built confidence. Every time he faced fear and survived, the next challenge became slightly less intimidating. Courage, like resilience, strengthened through repetition. Joe also learned that fear shrinks when confronted. The things that once seemed overwhelming often became manageable once he engaged with them directly. Avoidance amplified fear, action reduced it. Courage reshaped his identity. He stopped seeing himself as someone limited by anxiety and started seeing himself as someone capable of bold decisions. That identity shift was powerful. When you view yourself as courageous, you begin to behave accordingly. And over time, fear lost its control. It did not disappear, but it no longer dictated his choices. Instead of allowing fear to write his story, Joe chose to keep writing, even with trembling hands, even with uncertainty ahead, even with risks still present. Talent can open doors. Luck can create moments. Opportunity can provide exposure. But relentlessness, that unwavering refusal to stop, is what builds legacy. Joe Ranga understood that temporary effort produces temporary results, but sustained determination creates something lasting. Relentlessness is not about speed, it is about endurance. It is not about dramatic bursts of energy, it is about consistent forward motion. Joe did not rely on occasional inspiration. He relied on daily commitment. While others worked in waves of motivation, he worked in patterns of discipline. There were seasons when results were invisible. No applause. No recognition. No immediate reward. Those are the moments where many people slow down. They begin to question whether the effort is worth it. But Joe had a different mindset. He believed that work done in silence builds strength that noise can never produce. He kept going when excitement faded. He kept going when support decreased. He kept going when progress seemed slow. That consistency separated him from the crowd. Relentlessness also required sacrifice. Time had to be invested. Comfort had to be postponed. Distractions had to be minimized. Joe understood that every yes to his goal required a no to something else. Legacy demands priority. He became protective of his focus. While others were distracted by short-term pleasures, he was committed to long-term purpose. While others celebrated small achievements and became comfortable, he treated each win as fuel for the next challenge. Relentlessness builds reputation. Over time, people begin to recognize consistency. They see that you do not disappear when things become difficult. They see that you show up repeatedly. Trust grows. Respect develops. Not because of one great performance but because of sustained effort. Joe also learned that legacy is not built in a single breakthrough moment. It is built in thousands of quiet decisions. Choosing discipline over laziness, progress over procrastination, responsibility over excuses. Each day he chose to continue, he laid another brick in the foundation of something greater than himself. Relentlessness transforms identity. You stop being someone who hopes and become someone who executes. You stop waiting for ideal circumstances and start creating progress in any circumstance. The habit of persistence becomes stronger than the impulse to quit. There were moments when exhaustion tested him. When the journey felt longer than expected. When the finish line seemed distant. But Joe reminded himself that meaningful goals are rarely achieved quickly. He trusted that sustained effort compounds over time. Legacy is not about being remembered for one achievement. It is about being remembered for a pattern of character, resilience, discipline, courage, consistency. Joe's refusal to quit became part of his identity. His work ethic became his signature. His persistence became his message. And through relentless effort, day after day, challenge after challenge, he continued building something that would outlast temporary success. Something rooted in determination, shaped by endurance, and strengthened by the simple but powerful choice to never stop moving forward. Consistency is the bridge between intention and achievement. Many people start strong. They begin with enthusiasm, passion, and bold promises. But starting is common, sustaining is rare. Joe Ranga understood that greatness is not built in dramatic moments. It is built in disciplined repetition. Consistency means showing up whether you feel inspired or not. It means honoring commitments even when no one is watching. It is choosing progress daily even when the improvement feels small. Joe did not rely on bursts of motivation. He relied on routine. There were days when energy was high and productivity flowed easily. But there were also days when exhaustion lingered, distractions tempted him, and doubt resurfaced. On those difficult days, consistency mattered most. Because anyone can perform when conditions are perfect. True character is revealed when conditions are not. Joe built habits instead of chasing hype. He created structured routines. He set small daily goals. He measured progress carefully. He focused on improvement rather than comparison. Over time, those small repeated actions produced noticeable growth. Skills sharpened. Confidence strengthened. Efficiency improved. What once required great effort became natural through repetition. Consistency also builds trust, both internally and externally. Internally, Joe began to trust himself. Each time he followed through on a commitment, he strengthened his self-belief. Promises to himself were no longer empty words. They were agreements he honored. That self-trust created powerful confidence. Externally, people noticed his reliability. He was not someone who disappeared when enthusiasm faded. He was not someone who abandoned projects midway. His steady presence built credibility. When others hesitated, he continued. When others paused, he persisted. Consistency transforms average effort into excellence. A single workout does not build strength. A single study session does not create mastery. A single attempt does not produce expertise. But repeated effort over months and years reshapes ability entirely. Joe understood the compounding effect of disciplined action. Just as small financial investments grow over time, small improvements accumulate. 1% better each day may feel insignificant in the moment, but over time it becomes transformational. He stopped chasing overnight success. Instead, he focused on long-term mastery. While others looked for shortcuts, he embraced steady progress. While others grew impatient, he stayed committed. Consistency also protects momentum. When you take long breaks from effort, restarting becomes harder. But when you maintain daily action, even at a small level, you preserve forward movement. Joe learned that even minimal progress is better than none. A small step forward keeps the journey alive. Excellence is rarely the result of a single breakthrough. It is the result of relentless, repeated practice. The difference between ordinary and extraordinary is often consistency sustained over time. Joe Ranga did not become strong because of one powerful moment. He became strong because he refused to break his pattern of effort. Day after day, challenge after challenge, improvement after improvement. And through that unwavering consistency, effort slowly transformed into mastery, discipline transformed into identity, and ordinary actions evolved into extraordinary results. As we reflect on Joe Ranga's journey, one truth becomes clear: greatness is never accidental. It is forged through courage, resilience, persistence, and the unwavering refusal to quit. Every challenge he faced, every setback he endured, every lesson he embraced, they were not obstacles to stop him, but stepping stones to build something far greater than himself. Joe's story teaches us that the path to success is rarely smooth, that the world does not hand out victories lightly, and that dreams demand relentless effort. But it also shows us that character, purpose, and perseverance can overcome the impossible. His journey reminds us that no failure is final, no fear is insurmountable, and no setback is permanent when met with determination and an unbreakable spirit. So let us carry his example forward. Let us act with courage when fear whispers doubt, persist when the road grows rough, and commit to growth when comfort tempts us to pause. Let us remember that every small effort, every disciplined choice, and every lesson learned compounds into extraordinary results. Joe Ranga did not quit. He did not settle. He did not allow obstacles to define him. And in doing so, he left behind more than accomplishments. He left a blueprint for courage, perseverance, and greatness. Let his story inspire us to push beyond our limits, to embrace challenges as opportunities, and to pursue our vision with relentless determination. Because like Joe, we too have the power to refuse to quit, to rise above adversity, and to create a legacy that lasts far beyond a single lifetime.